Hi, everybody. It's Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on this Wednesday, the 24th of July, 2019, rolling right along. And we're going into what looks like a stretch of weather here that is going to be pretty nice and actually relatively uneventful. Probably not going to see a shower or a thunderstorm. Many of you may not see a shower or thunderstorm from now right until at least next Tuesday. You might have to wait till next Wednesday for the next cold front. So usually you get these big weather events like we had the severe weather event back on Monday, and then the atmosphere takes a breather for a little while. So this is kind of our relaxation period. I also realized I could set my camera further back, so made the shot a little wider, as you can see the green screen that is behind me. Hope everybody had a really nice day. The humidity was down today. There's a nice blue sky and sunshine with some fair weather clouds. There were a couple of pop-up showers and even a few thunderstorms that are on the radar right now in central and western PA, just kind of scattered around. Probably some of that having to do with a little bit of cold, unstable air aloft working against some of the higher terrain out to the west. But other than that, really, there is very little going on, and there will be no humidity to deal with until we get to Saturday. Saturday will probably be the first day where the humidity starts to creep up into the 60s on the dew points, and then we're going to push it further as we go into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. The temperatures will go along with it. I think many areas will be back up to 90 degrees. They'll be close on Saturday. My thinking is that the wind is going to be coming in with a bit of an ocean component to it, so that might actually hold the temperatures down by a degree or two, but then they'll turn around and go more southwest on Sunday, and that should take temperatures up to upper 80s to some lower 90s, and we're going to carry it along into Monday and Tuesday. Not seeing anything extreme yet, and maybe on the last day before the cold front arrives, but you know what, that's so far out in the long range, we'll figure it out when we get there. So let's take a look at what's happening tonight. We are going to look at the tropics too. So we've got a system down in the Gulf of Mexico that I want to call just a little bit of attention to. It's a bit of a long shot as far as development is concerned. Now, I did hear from someone yesterday on the board who said not to forget the West. And actually, the spots that are getting some activity today in parts of Southern California, inland in the deserts, and also into northwestern Arizona and southern Nevada. We have flash flood watches and a few flash flood warnings working this afternoon there. And we also have excessive heat and heat advisories up for the interior in California, going up from south to north. And that really is about it. If you look everywhere else, it is there's not much here. It's just very, very quiet. No severe weather to worry about today, east of the Rockies anyway, and we're pretty much done, and I'm kind of liking it. Breaks are a good thing, and it doesn't have to be busy every single day, weather-wise. All right, so the Storm Prediction Center has we got that frontal boundary that is running off the East Coast now and across Florida. So you're seeing showers and thunderstorms there in northern and northeastern Florida, moving from west to east. We've got two areas of general thunderstorm activity around the Great Lakes. And as I mentioned, what's going on in some scattered stuff in western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio. And that, by the way, we still have this upper trough that's trying to get through. So that's what that is about. And you see out in the west, you've got the scattered showers and thunderstorms going on in the southwest into Southern California, down into the Baja Peninsula. And then they run up northward from there through the Rockies, where we have this, then we get to the plains, in the western plains, where we have a marginal to slight risk for severe weather going on. And that takes care of severe weather tonight. And we always like to look at WPC's 7-day precip forecast. It gives us an idea of what kind of pattern we're going to be in, and you'll notice that it's in the southwest and in the Rockies, Colorado southward to New Mexico, pretty busy with showers and storms over the next 7 days, with rainfall amounts in excess of 3 inches in some places, and also over Florida. With that frontal boundary across the Gulf states and over Florida out into the Atlantic, you are going to have some rain issues for Florida for the next several days, with that frontal boundary being stubborn. It's off the East Coast, so there are no issues there. The rain amounts that you're seeing here are probably skewed. Now, this goes through Wednesday night, so you do see some half-inch plus amounts from New York City westward, and then you get into the 1 inch, inch and a half to some 2-inch amounts around the Great Lakes. Much of this is back-end loaded. In other words, it comes late in the forecast period. It certainly is not going to come during the first part of the forecast period. So we're happy about that. Let's look at the U.S. satellite, where there's not a whole lot. It's look how dry it is, and across the plains. And on up through the Midwest, you do have some patchy clouds. And by the way, you notice the clouds are coming from the northern lakes, moving almost north-south. That is the back edge of that trough, waiting for it to get kicked out of the way. And meanwhile, on the east side of the trough axis off the Atlantic seaboard, you've got this long, long march of clouds from the southwest Gulf of Mexico running across through over Florida, and then going northeastward along and just off the southeast coast of the United States, and then heading out northeastward from there toward Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. And there are several waves along the way that you can kind of pick out here. There's a wave that is well out to the east of Cape Cod now, moving toward Nova Scotia with some rain. And there'll be a couple of other waves that will develop on this frontal boundary. We're going to be interested to see if anything comes out of the disturbed weather that's left back in the Gulf of Mexico. There are times when you get situations like this where a frontal boundary doesn't happen often, that you get a frontal boundary to push as far south as this one did. Certainly not in the middle of July, the middle and latter part of July. But there you have it, and you've got disturbed weather down in the Gulf of Mexico. But there are issues with regarding development, whereas Barry, when it formed out of also a stalled frontal boundary into the northeastern Gulf, and you had energy that dropped down with the upper trough that dropped down into the northeast Gulf that eventually became warm core and developed into a tropical storm. This might be a bit more work to get it to some sort of tropical system, because there are a few other things going on this time around that weren't necessarily there the last time, and we'll discuss that a bit further in a moment. So let me pull the radar up before I go to the wide screen again. So let me get that radar up. I forgot to do that. So I'm going to take a look at what little is happening as of 6:07 Eastern Time. And here we go. So we'll take this out here. And you got to move it to the top, of course. So you can see the scattered activity back through parts of western Maryland, back through the western part of PA. There's some scattered cells there. And you have some scattered cells running down through parts of Ohio. None of this is severe. These are just, you're getting these thunderstorms popping up with the cold air aloft and the upper trough that's swinging through, and that really is about it. Down to the frontal boundary, offshore the Carolinas, and then you see that the rain that's over much of northern Florida, and with some showers and storms moving into also parts of central Florida, moving eastward. And then as we head out further to the west, it does get busy across Colorado and New Mexico, and also down in the southwest. And we're seeing some fairly hefty showers and thunderstorms here that are moving northwestward into parts of northeastern Arizona and through southern Nevada, southwestern Utah, and in southern California. So the flash flood watches are certainly warranted there. It doesn't take much to set off a wholesale flood down in the southwest, because everything pretty much runs off. So it is a bit on the busy side in that part of the world. So back home, look at these these temperature dew points here at 6 o'clock. We've got temperatures in the upper 70s and low 80s. Dew points are in the 50s to around 60. It was an absolutely delightful day with no real issues at all, and we are seeing that frontal boundary is of course well offshore. You can also see on this view I have the radar plots there. The radar echoes in that small patch near Forney Trail in Pennsylvania, where it's 70 there right now and 56 on the dew point. It looks like they have a heavy downpour close by. There's also a cell not too far from Altoona, 75, 57, and then those scattered cells back over into Ohio. But it's just been a really great day through upstate New York. You have temperatures that are in the middle and upper 70s and dew points down in the 50s. That's the same story, mid 70s to low 80s across New England, and through much of Maine it's in the 70s with comfortable dew points in the 50s, and down into southern New England the same idea. And let's not forget we have our friends down in the mid-Atlantic states that are enjoying dew points also down in the 50s and low 60s. Washington, D.C. right now is, well, Camp Springs is 76 with a dew point of 64. Trying to see if I can. Baltimore is 82 with a dew point of 57. So it looks like there's actually a shower or maybe even a thunderstorm in there in the Washington, D.C. area, because I can see the radar echo sort of buried underneath some of the numbers here. But all in all, Washington, D.C. Routinely gets above 90, so to have a day like today is an absolute gift. Spreading those low dew points in the 50s and low 60s down into much of interior North Carolina, interior South Carolina, daytime temperatures in the middle 80s, with dew points in the mid 50s. Same across Georgia. My God, look at Atlanta right now. Atlanta is 84 with a dew point of 52. That's incredible. And also the fact that you've got these low dew points. Look at across the Gulf states. Now, here's Craig Field, Selma, Alabama is 90 with a dew point of 52. That just doesn't happen. I lived in New Orleans for many years. Many years ago, I lived in New Orleans and spent 3 summers there. And I think it, maybe I could recall once or twice where you had a cold front come down pretty far to the south where it almost made it through in southeast Louisiana. But New Orleans is 90 with a dew point of 65. That's believe it, for New Orleans, that is low for this time of year. And you've got dew points up on the North Shore in southeast Louisiana with dew points in the low 60s, dew points low 60s across Louisiana back over into Texas with these low dew points. And that is one of the critical issues regarding the disturbed weather that's in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm going to come back to this in a bit, and we'll get into it a bit more. So, with regards to where we are going forward weather-wise, as I said, there really isn't going to be too much happening here over the next several days. I'm going to bring up. Let's go to the Northeast first. We'll come back to the Gulf. So we'll do the full U.S. view. How's that? So folks from coast to coast can see what's happening here. And I've got the radar laid. We'll start with the NAM model, and we are seeing another one of these waves off the North Carolina coast that's going to be moving to the northeast in due course. But that frontal boundary is so far out that it's not going to have any impact at all on the weather in the northeast, the mid-Atlantic states, or even down into much of the southeast. You're still going to have that boundary hanging over North Florida. And usually what happens in these instances is the showers and storms kind of die off during the night and they fire up again during the day side. But this high is going to keep things relatively dry. And if you look at the position of where the high is Friday night, you have a high center east of Cape Cod and another center back in western North Carolina. this really sort of pins the dry air in for an extra day or so, and you really have to wait till the high gets far enough out that you start to get into a southwest flow. That's when the humidity will really begin to crank up a bit. I don't think we're going to see that until we get into later Saturday and on Sunday. The GFS, same idea. The high goes out to our north. Last week, when we were getting into the extreme heat, we had high pressure right along the southeast coast, but we actually had west-northwest isobars across the northeast down into the northern mid-Atlantic states. So that created pretty much a furnace, heating those temperatures up well up into the 90s to around 100 with that west to west-northwest wind and some downslope, plus throw in those 70 dew points, and it was miserable. Well, this time around it's a little different. With the high to the north, especially on Saturday, the wind is going to have a bit of an ocean component to it, and that will hold the temperatures down a shade. So instead of getting to, say, 92 or 93, we're probably only going to see highs maybe 88 or 89 for a vast majority of the area. And then finally, as we get into later Sunday, and particularly as you get into Monday, you have more of a southwest isobar. So that's going to push up the temperatures, I think, up into the upper 80s and low 90s. And then we'll get ready for the next cold front, which doesn't really get to the coast. And I don't have the GFS out far enough. This is Wednesday morning. So the front is still to the west of the coast on Wednesday morning. So maybe later Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And if the model does what it usually does, it tries to show fronts coming through in the morning, and they wind up coming through more in the late afternoon and evening, and that's about it. Meanwhile, out in the Rockies and in the Southwest, seeing some of that shower and thunderstorm activity that's developing there. I'll just run it back to the beginning. Pretty active here at this point. By the way, on the lower left is what will soon tropical, I think it was Tropical Storm Dahlia, it might be a depression now, and it'll be gone. But you're seeing that moisture in that southwest, some of that monsoonal moisture that happens, and you're getting into some showers and thunderstorms. That kind of continues into Saturday, and then it relaxes a bit after that, kind of concentrates itself more down into Mexico rather than coming up into the desert areas of the Southwest. And again, the activity across much of the United States looks to be fairly quiet until we can get this cold front to come through maybe Wednesday, sometime later Wednesday. Now, it might be another setup for some strong thunderstorms or possibly even some severe weather. We are continuing to deal with this sort of fast flow across the southern Canada and the northern tier of the U.S. So we keep bringing these shortwave troughs that drop into the eastern part of the United States. This is the one we're dealing with right now that's still over us tomorrow, gradually weakens and pulls out. Then we have another shortwave. The next one is going to go from Lake Winnipeg and get kicked northeastward. So it's not going to have much impact here. But you see the southern edge of the jet stream, that 585 to 588 height line is down across Maryland. So you do have westerly winds aloft. You don't really have a strong ridge of high pressure in the east. It's kind of flat. A stronger high is out in the west, and then another trough drops into the east for the middle part of next week. Not as strong as what we saw Monday and Tuesday, but there's enough troughing here to me to suggest that maybe some of the thunderstorms with that front coming by might wind up being on the strong side. And I really don't see much else going on pattern-wise. This pretty much is the same story going forward for the next 2 weeks, and we're going to be getting into the month of August. So it's the same. I think the same pattern pretty much holds going into the first month of August, which means that northern jet will ebb and flow, pull up to the north, drop down to the south as shortwave troughs move along it. Some of those shortwaves will wind up being stronger than others. So let's take a look at what's happening in the Gulf of Mexico. The Hurricane Center has been, I think there's a battle of forecasters there because on the tropical weather outlooks that I've been seeing, I guess from the change of shifts, somebody's putting up 20% probabilities. Then the next person comes in, changes it to 10%, and the next person comes back, changes it back to 20%. Either way, the chances are low. And let's look at what's happening right now. Take a look at this loop, and you're going to take the beauty of the GO 16 is the incredible detail. But you'll notice that you have clouds at different heights moving at all different directions. There are the clouds at the low levels off the coast of Mexico and Texas. They're actually moving northeast. You have some of them moving northeast to southwest. Then some of the higher level clouds are moving southwest to northeast. There's all sorts of upper air wind issues going on, particularly as you get to the higher levels. You do have a fairly strong jet that is evident dropping down from the bottom of that trough. So right there, that is going to work against tropical cyclone development. Tropical cyclones like light and variable winds all the way up into the atmosphere. They don't like wind shear as you go, as you increase with height. They don't like increasing wind shear. That tends to rip the thunderstorms apart. So right now, this looks like a stalled out front. Sometimes what happens is in this time of year, and you'll see it also happen sometimes in the Atlantic, south of 35 degrees north. You get a frontal boundary, a wave develops on it. The differences on either side of the front become almost non-existent, so that the front basically falls apart. The surface low becomes a warm core system. It transitions to a warm core system and gradually acquires tropical characteristics and develops into a tropical depression or a tropical storm or a hurricane. We've certainly seen hurricanes start off as lows on dying frontal boundaries. Well, the upper air wind issues here kind of work against that. But I want to go back to this surface map just to show you what's going on. First off, take a look at the wind barbs here out at these buoys that we have. And it looks like there actually is a very broad low. We have a west wind at buoy 42395, a west wind at 16 miles an hour. Jump up to Green Canyon buoy, and the wind there is east-southeast at 5. And then we have this buoy here. This is GB 172 Salsa. Oh, it's a Shell energy and exploration and production. So that's an oil rig there. Their wind is northeast at 24 miles an hour. So right in here, it looks like there's some kind of broad low pressure center. You've got northeast and northerly winds in some of the buoys that are out and rigs that are out to the west across the Gulf of Mexico, and you've got mostly northwest. You got a north wind here at 16 miles an hour at buoy 42020. So that's pretty far to the west, but there is some kind of broad low, and it looks like it's sort of elongated out, elongated east-west, sitting in the central Gulf of Mexico. But the dew points out in the Gulf, obviously you would expect them to see them in the mid-70s in that really, really tropical environment. But take a look along the immediate Gulf Coast, especially back along the Texas coast, and you've got dew points here in the middle and even some low 50s. So this dry air really has pushed its way so far south. There's so much dry air here that's an issue for a tropical system that to develop. It wants to be completely immersed in a tropical environment, and if part of the circulation, part of any kind of circulation at whatever level is reaching up into an area that has all these low dew points, that dry air will probably get entrained inside any kind of broad low that tries to form. So that is another reason why that this system may have a particularly tough time getting going. But I like the fact that this tool is available, because oftentimes, if you don't have an Air Force plane out there, out in an area where a system's developing, and we could at least take a look at some of these buoys and rigs and what they're reporting, it's certainly helpful to determine what kind of strength you have with regards to a tropical system. But this is, these are the issues that we're dealing with this frontal boundary that's in the Gulf of Mexico. So I would say that barring a surprise, it's probably not likely that we're going to get development out of this The NAM earlier today actually spun up a bit of a surface low. I'll pull up the close-up view here of the southeast. This is the latest GFS, so we'll run this back to see if the GFS picks up on it. And actually it does. You can see that there is a broad low that it has somewhere at around 25 and 92. But again, it doesn't really do anything with it. It just kind of meanders it off the coast of Texas, and then you can't even find it by the time we get to Sunday. Just because the models, by the way, aren't showing anything doesn't necessarily mean much. I actually kind of like it when the models don't show tropical systems, because it keeps people from getting worked up over it, and there's nothing to share on social media that way. But here's the NAM from late this afternoon. Also picks up. You see all that convection that's there in the western Gulf, so it does pick up on some kind of surface low. But again, doesn't do much with it. Just brings some rain into the Texas coast during Friday, and then again on Saturday kind of brings a few waves of showers moving inland. We also have a little bit of activity that moves off the Florida coast, but that looks like to be a non-tropical system that is running out to the northeast. So I think that pretty much sums it up. We're in a very, very quiet mode. There's nothing really out there in the tropical Atlantic to speak of. That remains very quiet, at least for the time being. So I'm going to come back up full screen here. Here we go. And come over to the chat board and talk to y'all. Small crowd tonight. Well, that's okay. Chuck Cardillo, Erica Baker. Erica, you're looking at those high levels there with the upper air maps. Very important to look at one of the maps you take a look at is on Tropical Tidbits is the wind shear that goes from 850 millibars to 250 millibars. That's a good tool to use when tropical systems are developing, so you can see where the wind shear is. Anthony Orr points out that Philip Klotzbach of Colorado State University, over the past 30 days, Caribbean shear has been stronger than average, ninth strongest since 1980. Of note, more shear correlates with less active overall seasons. Yes, and it could be still seeing impacts of whatever weak El Nino we have going on, but we showed on the satellite yesterday, you can certainly see the clouds across the Caribbean moving from west to east, so wind shear is definitely an issue. Trevor McKelvey, you're already talking about a winter. Every winter looks like a cold. Somebody's going to always show a good chance for a cold winter in the eastern U.S. Okay, just so you know, we're clear that is sort of a recurring theme. Izzy D, is there any correlation between cool versus warm summer and how winters play, and for tropical storms and hurricanes? I honestly don't think there is. A number of people have looked trying to find that magic silver bullet to see if you could link one to the other, and there doesn't appear to be. So I think the seasons, there might be some impact somewhere, some sort of very broad impact, or maybe some very broad statement that you might be able to say, but I've never really seen anybody make a firm correlation between cool summers versus warm summers versus hot summers, and what you have when it comes to the winter time. There's probably just too many combinations that would make for for all sorts of different outcomes. I can think of some winters where we had really exceptional winters in terms of cold and snow that have come out of very hot summers. I could think of the exact opposite. And we can make other combinations thereof. Again, everybody's always looking for that magic bullet. And Trevor, what is you put up what is MGBC? If I may ask, MGBC had videos about that, and it turns out it does. Okay, so let's see. Just running back through the chat, seeing all the usual live stream suspects on there, which is a good thing. Just let's see, try any low humidity and nice weather. Shmuel Biston, good observation. And are you new to the chat board? Because I don't remember seeing you, but if you are, welcome. And appreciate you being here. Welcome to the YouTube channel. James, NASCAR fan, has gotten to spending a little time away from NASCAR watching us tonight. Johnny Quest on the road to 200 inches of rain a year. Well, what are you up to, Johnny? 105? Last check. And Chuck Cardillo bragging about the fact that he was down in the 40s this morning to me. And yeah, you've got another night of temperatures down in the 40s. Let's see. Could be that since Hurricane upwelling causes slight different outcomes due to cooler bodies of water? I'm trying to find the point before. Where are you, Izzy? Chuck, average snow for me is 27. Oh, you guys are talking snow. It's not even, oh, good God, why can't we wait till October, for God's sake? Stephen Franco, the daily average high temperature starting to lower. Not yet. Soon. We're at the peak now, and I think the max normals begin to drop around August 5th or 6th, and they start dropping after that. And the nights actually take another week or so before they start to drop. But we're just about it. We're at the summer peak in terms of climatology, and we will be headed slowly but surely downward as we head into August. And then it starts to accelerate, of course, as we head into December. And then, we'll get into October. So, and then we could start, maybe talking about the upcoming winter. So let's get through the rest of the summer and all of hurricane season before we do that. Okay? All right, look, folks, let's wrap it up. Have a great night. Sleep with the windows open and the air conditioning turned off. I got a long-range post coming up in about 30 minutes. It's on the website now. Patreon folks have had it since earlier this afternoon, so if you want to bone up on that, go right ahead. And, well, while it's calm, I'm putting my feet up. I'm going to take a sort of a mental break. Which is a good thing. But we'll be back tomorrow night at our usual time. And, of course, don't forget in the morning you've got weather in 5 days in 5 minutes. Good night.